no evidence of that actually occurring. And I'm going to go a step further here. You'll see later on, it's reasonable, if we assumed Officer Palmer did call the dog or dogs over to him, the first dog, it would have been the first dog that came trotting over to him. The other two dogs were being held by one of the owners. So the only dog that was walking around at that time, technically, was dog one. That dog trotted over to Officer Palmer, sniffed him, he gave him a kind of getaway symbol or sign, and the dog trotted off. So if we say this did happen, it would have been, in my opinion, the first dog that was walking down a sidewalk. Slide. This is a still frame of dog one. Dog two and the other dog, which we didn't number because it never left the grasp of the female here. Dog one is right here, and as you'll see in the video, dog one trots this way, sniffs Officer Palmer, and then trots away this way. Harmless, friendly, tail wagging side to side, ears flopping. It's in a trot, canter, clearly a friendly dog. Demeanor, friendly. Nothing to fear of that dog right there whatsoever. Slide. Here's the video of dog one broken from the rest of the video. Clearly, that dog was clearly not a threat. That dog, if that dog could have got up there, he would have hugged and probably licked Officer Palmer. No doubt. Slide. The investigative process. When I took over as chief in 2019, it's been my policy that anytime an officer discharges the weapon in line of duty, that we investigate it in some form or fashion. Whether it's shooting at an animal that we have to destroy, like a deer that gets hit by a car, there's forms for that, or whether it's shooting an animal that's attacking or a human being, we always investigate every single discharge in some form or fashion. Officer Palmer was initially placed on modified duty during the investigation, and he was then placed on administrative leave due to multiple death threats against him and his family. We consulted several outside experts during the investigation and to gain insights on animal behavior and just general animal things about animals that maybe we didn't understand, and they help us get a better understanding on behaviorals and how we can improve our knowledge and handling of about animals in general. We attempted to meet with the Kerns family for this investigation. We sent out certified letters, and we received no responses from the Kerns family, and they did not take part in any part of this investigation. Slide. When is an officer's use of force reasonable? Use of force must be objectively reasonable. This was decided by the Supreme Court in Graham v. Connor in 1989. And they determined what the meaning of the word objectively reasonable is. So the reasonableness of an officer's actions, it must be considered from a perspective of a reasonable officer in that same position who knows only the information available to the original officer at the time of the decision. In other words, in layman's terms here, 20/20 hindsight or Monday morning quarterbacking cannot be used when determining what was objectively reasonable. In other words, everyone in this room and the entire population of the United States and some international had 2 months to watch these videos over and over and over again and come up with the impression that Officer Palmer could do this, and that differently based on their perception or their personal experience with animals. Slide. The Ohio Revised Code 955.28. In this section, it outlines the legal situations in which deadly force against dogs may be used. Subsection A states, in part, a dog that is chasing or approaching in a menacing fashion or apparent attitude of attack can be killed at the time of that chasing, threatening, harassing, or approaching. That's quoted from the Ohio Revised Code. The middle part of the paragraph was cut out because it really wasn't applicable to this situation. The incident analysis. Multiple investigators studied the body-worn camera footage to determine whether Dog 2 ran at Officer Palmer in a menacing fashion, and if Officer Palmer could have reasonably believed the dog intended to harm him. Prior to breaking away from the owner, Dog 2 can be seen staring intently or locking on to Officer Palmer, never losing eye contact. And you'll see that in the video that we have prepared here, the next couple slides. When Dog 2 broke away and ran toward Officer Palmer attempted to create distance and placed a utility pole between himself and the dog. The dog aggressively changed directions, and continued to charge Officer Palmer. Incident analysis in the video. Now there's some questions on why there's no sound here. So when an officer pushes the on button on his body-worn camera, it immediately records sound and video. But it also goes back 30 seconds to record video only. So what we discovered in this case, and you'll see later on in the investigative report, that Officer Palmer did not turn his body camera on immediately leaving the cruiser. So that's why there's no sound here. But it's captured by video. Slide. It's an analysis. So right here is Dog 2. And the red arrow indicates the female holding the other dog, which was never named in this presentation, by the tail. Now, I would assume, I'm not a dog expert, but I would assume that no one's ever trained to hold a dog by the tail. I would assume that the tails, that'd be a painful way to hold a dog, but I don't know for sure. Next slide. Again, this is Dog 2 running directly at Officer Palmer. Slide. Again, Dog 2. The other dog still being held by the tail, both hands now. Tail is straight up curled. Next slide. Officer Palmer started from right around here. He backpedaled. He's actually in the street over here. The dog changed course. Tail still up, curled, ears forward, all his weight's forward on his front paw. And this is when Officer Palmer shortly engaged Dog 2. This is a picture of an aggressive dog. Dog 2 exhibited 4 of the 7 indicators: tail raised, charging weight forward, eye staring, ears erect, tilted forward. You don't need to have every single indicator here to show a dog is aggressive. Slide. This thing happens so fast, and you know, when officers are on scene and people go through a stressful situation, things slow down during stress. So you're going to see this video in slow motion, and you're going to see how Dog 2 keyed in on Officer Palmer, how the stare was present, how Dog 2 never broke the stare, and as we first indicated, he locked down like a missile, and that's an accurate description. And how Dog 2 turned around that utility pole and continued after Officer Palmer. You're going to see Dog 1 first come through here, sniff, and then trot away. Hey, Jake, pause that for a minute, will you? There's a misconception here that I want to bring up real quick. Is there are people who still believe and who have believed that dog 1 is a dog that Officer Palmer shot. That is still out there. And no matter what we do, we can't respond to social media immediately. It's not prudent, and it would be wrong for us to respond to social media posts and criticism without first doing an investigation. So there's some news media sources that have called me personally and asked why that the dog wagging the tail was shot by Officer Palmer. And when I pointed out to them that the first dog was not the dog that he shot, they rewatched the video and they were, oh my God, I didn't see that. So there's a big misconception that this here is the dog that Officer Palmer shot. That is not the case. So I think I needed to point that out here, and I just think it's important for you guys to see that and hear that before the rest of the video plays. Dog 2 is right here. Dog 2 breaks away aggressively and kind of loads up before it runs. Keaton, Officer Palmer. Tail up, ears up, weight forward. Palmer's backing up. Next. Some of you may or may not know, Officer Palmer was bit by a dog on April 8th of this year. He was bit by what appeared to be a non-aggressive dog that was actually on a leash that someone was turning in to the police department to transport to Dr. Wood's office for the animal control officer, Lorain County, to pick up. He was initially treated and released from the emergency room. Slide. Several days later, he was hospitalized, and it was so bad he was put in intensive care for 3 days. He had to have major surgery on his hand, and he had to have IV antibiotics for several weeks to control the infection that they believe spread to his heart and up his arm. He was told there's a 50% chance that he was going to lose his hand and had to retire. Select. The day of the dog bite, and this, I believe, is his second trip to the ER, or just before. Slide. This is, of course, his hand. This is the first infection mark, and as you can see, with the spread here, this was the second mark they had to make because it was crawling up his arm. Yeah, looks like it's pretty bad. Slide. Post-surgery. Next. The Lorain Police Department, OPS, conducted a thorough review of all the available evidence, witness accounts that would cooperate and come forward, the expert opinions, and the formal interviews to determine whether a policy violation occurred. The critical review points include Officer Palmer's decision to apply force and the time it took for the event to occur and activation of the officer's body-worn camera. Were Officer Palmer's actions objectively reasonable? OPS considered the footage, witness statements, Officer Palmer statements, expert opinion, Ohio Revised Code, and case law. Taking the totality of all information, OPS found that a reasonable officer placed in this situation would find Officer Palmer's decision to use deadly force to be objectively reasonable in this incident. Slide. Investigative conclusions. Officer Palmer's decision to use deadly force was objectively reasonable, and therefore was within Lorain Police Department's policies and procedures. The level of force, as well as the number of shots fired, duration of the shots fired, were consistent with research findings related to officers acting under stress. Officer Palmer's actions related to these considerations are therefore reasonable and within policy. We did find Officer Palmer failed to activate his body-worn camera immediately upon exiting his vehicle. And it eliminated our ability to investigate the important audio recordings during the incident. He was found to be outside of policy in regards to that use. Scientific considerations. Level of force, as well as the number of shots fired, duration of shots fired, were consistent with research findings related to officers acting under stress. The principles of human performance and response under stress says that reactions to changes in stimuli, the dog's changing direction in this case, do not occur simultaneously. You must consider a person's reaction time. And what that means is you see something, it takes time to analyze what you see and tell your body to stop doing that. The mental sequence is what I said, reaction time. Physical sequence is the movement time equals your reaction time. Next. Put it in some perspective here. NHTSA did a study. Typical reaction time to perceive a threat, such as a deer or a child running in the road, is about 0.75 seconds. And then you add another 0.75 seconds to decide to act and move your foot to the brake pedal. That's 1.5 seconds. Here is 1.5 seconds. That's it. Officer Palmer's reaction time from the point where the dog changed direction to the point in time when he stopped shooting was 1.47 seconds. That's under the normal 1.5 reaction time. Again, this is 1.5. Therefore, Officer Palmer's time to stop shooting was considered reasonable. And to give you one more example, you know, we're all on the phone talking to somebody, and we say our goodbyes, and we get ready to hang up, and we've made a decision to hang up, and all of a sudden someone says, no, wait, and we hang up anyway. I know we've all done it. I've done it in the mirror multiple times, but on purpose. You know, so it takes time to make decisions, and that's just the way it is. And we're no different. We're not machines, we're not robots. We're human like everybody else is. And we have the same reaction time that everybody else has. Slide. Independent external review. When I said earlier that we heard the public outcry, and we listen to public outcry, but we don't base our processes on public outcry, that is true to a point. However, this happened because of the public outcry. So when I say we listened, we listened. I contracted with Scott Hughes, who has a private company called SKCC Ltd. He's also the chief of police at Hamilton Township PD. He travels and he reviews police use of force incidents for Caliber Press, which is a national and actually international magazine and training site, for the Hutchins Association for Force Investigators, and the IACP. Scott Hughes has been qualified as an expert police witness in police patrol tactics and responses for use of force, police procedures, and policy practice and policy. He is a subject matter expert and was contracted by us to do a complete independent review of this case. He is not affiliated with us whatsoever. His direction was, here's all the information, what else do you need? Do a review. And that's it. He called with questions, we gave him answers. We took no part of the review. Whatever he came back with, we would have to live with, because that was his job. If he said we did it right, okay. If he said we did it half right, okay. If he said we did it wrong, well, we got to deal with it then. Slide. His findings. He opined Officer Palmer had observed a crime taking place, dogs at large. And he would be expected to investigate that. I want to talk about dogs at large for a minute. I'll make a comparison to a neighboring city, and I hope they don't get mad at me. City of Amherst, Ohio. They have squirrels running around their streets. Right in Ohio, we have dogs. And I say we have dogs because you all know we have dogs that run around our streets. It's been a problem for years. I've been here 31 years. It's been a problem for 31 years. And it's not going away. And to sit here and blame the police department or Officer Palmer for dogs is not appropriate in my view. The owners of these dogs that are running at large need to be held accountable. And we are making changes within our department, and we're moving forward on some other things that don't work with the mayor's office to try to get an animal control officer to take steps to make it so that dogs aren't like squirrels in Amherst and Lorain, Ohio. He was opined that Palmer's actions were consistent with our policies, training, and national procedures. He was opined that Officer Palmer acted within the parameters of Ohio Revised Code, section 955.28. He was opined that Officer Palmer's reaction time to engage what he perceived to be a threat to the time he ended the engagement was within normal parameters. Slide. He used conclusions. Officer Palmer followed best practices. Officer Palmer was conducting a lawful investigation and had probable cause to further investigate. Officer Palmer had recently been attacked by a dog, hospitalized, and told he may lose his hand. Prior to this encounter, it cannot be discounted and should have weighed heavily on his perception of this event. Although this is Hughes' opinion and conclusion, Officer Palmer had reasonable cause to believe that the dog was going to attack him. During this investigation, a dog charged him, causing Officer Palmer to fear for his safety. Slide. Upon exiting his cruiser, Officer Palmer was forced to make a split-second decision, which is likely influenced by his previous dog bite. Officer Palmer's actions in this incident were consistent with what another reasonable officer would do in a similar situation. And I believe this point right here is a very important point. If Officer Palmer ignored the dogs at large and the public harm occurred due to them being loose, Officer Palmer could have possibly faced dereliction of duty charges and other administrative charges. If Officer Palmer didn't stop here and that dog or dogs bit a child, we'd be sitting here having a whole nother discussion right now of why didn't the Lorain police officer act and allow that dog to bite a kid. So it seems that being a police officer and making tough decisions is the catch-22. It seems like we can't win, and we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. LP's Employee Review Board. The ERB convened to review the completed investigation and all related documents. They concurred with the findings of OPS. A disciplinary hearing was scheduled but waived by Officer Palmer. The ERB, by preponderance of the evidence, found Officer Palmer in violation of the policy for audio-video recording, the body-worn camera policy. Law Director Review. I sent the whole investigation and all documents of ours and by Scott Hughes to Lorain Law Director Pat Riley for review, to determine if any criminal charges would be appropriate in this incident as a whole. That's both on Palmer's side and the Kerns side. Dogs registered and complaints. The Kerns family has had a history of irresponsible animal ownership. Wilbur and Tammi Kerns each registered 4 mixed breed dogs approximately 2 weeks apart for a total of 8 dogs in violation of Lorain City Ordinance. It's our opinion there's no other reason to do this except to avoid any red flags for having too many dogs at one household, which is 5 animals is the limit for one household. The mayor's office has received several complaints concerning the poor living conditions for the animals and the neighbors who cannot open their windows due to the noxious odors and abundance of flies, and there's garbage in the property as well. The Kerns family was cited by the Lorain County Health District Division of Environmental Health concerning the deplorable conditions in May of 2023. Moving forward for Lorain Police Department. Police officers are not animal behavioral experts, nor are they expected to be. Police officers have a general training in dealing with animals. I mandated that LPD officers undergo additional training by the Ohio Police Officer Training Commission related to recognizing behaviors of companion animals, and that was completed, I think, last month. LPD has revised its policy and procedures in dealing with at-large animals. Officers will no longer attempt to capture or transport animals simply for being at large. Officers will be dispatched to attempt to identify the owner of the animal, and if identified, we will issue citations. However, no attempt will be made to capture the at-large animal unless there's a present danger to citizens. We've also ordered and have received and issued bite-resistant gloves and animal poles that have been purchased and placed in every supervisor patrol unit to assist officers in situations that require immediate police intervention involving loose, vicious dogs when and if the situation allows. And I can tell you this, I do not expect, nor should you expect, our cops to get bit or attacked by dogs. It's not happening in Lorain. I'm not going to let it happen in Lorain. People need to control your dogs. Period. And finally, for this, we're working with the mayor and city council to attempt to bring back the animal control humane officer. Tonight, we have partnered with WOBL. We have a monthly podcast with Gary, sitting right back there. And we talk about stuff that's sometimes hard to talk about, sometimes fun to talk about. But tonight took over as chief. I think that most people who know me know that I'm probably overly transparent sometimes, and I think that that's better to be overly than under transparent. So we talk about hard issues. Lieutenant Morris is there once a month. We're also on the channel with WNZN with Mark Ballard once a month as well. Once a week, I'm sorry, once a week. So members of the public can call in tonight. We're going to be there from 5 to 6-ish, 7-ish tonight to answer questions. I will say this, we're moving on from this. We made changes. We're going to move on in a positive manner. We're not going to answer questions that are going to be attacking. We're going to answer questions that are going to be constructive. If people want to know what we're going to do moving forward and how we're going to handle dogs and animals in the future, we're going to talk to people. Or clarifications on what happened, we're going to talk to people. But we're not going to deal with negative stuff. We're going to move forward. The only way to go is to move forward. So that's all I have. I'll first go to Mayor Jack Bradley if you have anything, Mayor.
I just, sure. I just appreciate the thorough job that the Lorain Police Department did in investigating this matter. Also that they did call in an expert to review all the materials and that they were going to respect what the expert had to say regarding this particular incident. I've had a chance to review the report that's been presented to all of you this morning, and I try not to jump to conclusions. So the first thing that I do after seeing the video is go to the law and look at the ordinances of the City of Lorain and the law for the state of Ohio, and then try to see how the facts fit in with the law. And in this particular case, if you look at the law, you look at the ordinances, it's very clear that these dogs were not on the owner's property and they were running loose, and that's a violation of the law in the City of Lorain. And if you look at the definitions of what a dangerous dog is, and you look at the definitions of when a person should be in fear of a dog that's running at large, you will see that this investigation is very consistent with what was the law, not only for the City of Lorain, but also the law for the state of Ohio. So I respect what the police did, and I hope everyone understands that this was a fair investigation, and it's the type of investigation that I would demand of our Lorain Police Department for any citizen in the City of Lorain. And so I want to compliment them on doing a thorough and complete investigation.
Dr. Washington, anything you want to add? Dr. Riley?
First, let me say you have to excuse me for not being in my work uniform. I suffered a bad leg injury and had a hard time getting a suit and tie on. But let me start by explaining a bit what the role of the prosecutor's office is. As the elected law director in Ohio, by law, I am also the chief prosecutor. I don't perform the prosecution daily on a day-to-day basis. I have subordinate prosecutors, but I am responsible for them. And so in that role, I think it's important to understand that the law enforcement agency, in this case the Lorain Police Department, has a job to do, and the prosecutor has a separate job to do. What is it that we expect of the LPD? We expect them to be our investigative arm. They are the ones who go into the field. They are the ones who investigate the facts. They are the ones who produce the reports. What does the prosecutor do? The prosecutor reviews those reports. It doesn't simply accept them carte blanche. We have our own critique of the work done by our law enforcement agency. We offer those critiques. It may very well be that the LPD, as the investigative arm of the prosecution of crime in the City of Lorain, must go back out into the field and do further investigation from time to time. But we then review their investigation reports. We determine whether or not there is crime that's been committed, and then we proceed to prosecute that crime. Here it was particularly important to me, and both the chief and the mayor have touched on it, so I have to believe it was critically important to them, that there be an independent arm reviewing the actions of Officer Palmer. In my preparation for the report itself and in talking to the chief and the investigators here, I insisted upon an independent arm being brought into the scenario and reviewing the circumstance as it's been determined. And that was done, and I'm particularly pleased about that. I reviewed the qualifications of Mr. Hughes as being able to conduct an independent review, and I accept him as being highly qualified. For that reason, as you go through the report, you'll find a page in there, I believe it's page 84, where the LPD makes certain recommendations. And as the prosecutor, I have concluded that I accept those recommendations in part, and I reject those recommendations in part. And let me explain that for you. The recommendations include two things. One, that there be no crime charged against Officer Palmer. Based upon the independent review and based upon my own independent research, I have concluded that there was no violation of what is known as Ohio Revised Code Section 955.28. That's the statute that does give rise to criminal charge in the event that a dog or animal is wrongfully injured or killed. In this case, I agree with the independent review and the conclusions reached by the LPD that that did not occur, and for that reason, I see no basis for a charge against Officer Palmer. Conversely, the recommendation in the investigative report is that there was a dog-at-large violation. The mayor himself, a moment ago, commented on that. And while there may or may not have been a violation of that ordinance, as you read it, it has been the policy of the Lorain Prosecutor's Office for many years, predating my election as the law director, that we do not charge people for a very first violation of that statute. You can imagine, in the running at large occur in the city of Lorain almost on a daily basis. To suggest that we would charge every dog owner on a first potential violation of that ordinance certainly is not responsible as far as I am concerned. And so it has been the policy of the Lorain Prosecutor's Office, it has been my policy, that on a first potential violation of that ordinance, we do not level a charge. In the event we receive a second report regarding this particular dog owner, of dogs again running at large, our position as the prosecutors would be differently. So let me say again and make it clear that we accept the LPD's recommendations in part, we reject them in part. I agree that Officer Palmer acted reasonably here and did not violate the statute, 955.28, as it's currently structured. I don't agree that we would accept charges to be filed against the dog owner because it would be contrary to our policy, notwithstanding the notoriety of this event and the public outcry, as both the mayor and the chief have commented. We are not going to act differently than our policy has otherwise would be applied here for this particular circumstance versus any other that comes into our office. So that's how I have reviewed and concluded. The prosecutor's office will proceed here, and absent facts that have not been made aware of me that may come to my attention after today, that's the position of the elected law director and the city prosecutor. Thank you.
Is there any questions for Director Riley before he sits down? Okay. Is there any questions for myself or the mayor before we call this conference complete?
What's the status of the officer?
He's still on modified duty.
When will he return to active duty? Do you know?
I have the report from the ERB sitting on my desk. I need to determine what the level of discipline is going to be, and from that point, we'll decide.
I wanted to ask, because you're talking about making changes, is a part of that, are you guys considering looking into past situations? You talked about a dog bite already happening, so it played into his fear of this dog biting him, having another attack. So are you guys looking into anything that would change sending officers into instances like this, where they've had a prior incident where a dog bit them? I mean, it's a very unique circumstance. I just didn't know if...
So, I wouldn't categorize it as fear. If he was truly afraid, reasonably, I would suspect that he wouldn't have stopped the dogs being at large. He would have kept driving. Two, if he was afraid, he probably would have engaged the first dog that came up to him. So it's reasonable, for me anyway, it's reasonable to say that he wasn't afraid. it's reasonable to me that he learned a life lesson. You're a brand new reporter, right? You're going to learn some lessons reporting. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to go, man, that was stupid. I ain't going to make that mistake again. It's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to all of us.
Right. And
So,
it happened to me, but my point is, my question is then, obviously, if if you're calling this a mistake, then that's where I'm just kind of.
I didn't call it a mistake. I simply said that life lessons are life lessons. When I went through training, I did things that I got lucky and nothing happened. And I'm like, man, boy, I got lucky on that one. So you always change your perspective, and you always change the way you do things tactically, so it doesn't happen again. Like I'm sure when you made your mistake, that you changed so it doesn't happen again to you. So in this case here, Officer Palmer's first bite was extreme. So we handled him with kid gloves. We made sure he got what he needed during the process of healing. He had I think 7 weeks off. We made sure we took care of him medically and everything else. So, cops are injured worse than that in a lot of things. We get cops in cars getting severe crashes, but we don't say they can't never drive a car again because they're afraid to drive a car again. We get cops that get punched in the face and get their eye sockets broken or their nose broken, but we don't say they can't go into bar fights anymore. So, this could be a never-ending. I get what you're saying, but this could be a never-ending thing. So
My thing is, if he wasn't afraid, I was just curious from your perspective, should he have had his firearm or had his hand on his firearm like the report said and all the witnesses said? Like he had his hand on his firearm from the time he stepped out. So if he were to do it again and he wasn't afraid, would you think he would do that differently, or do you suggest he do that differently?
Well, the report indicated that he needs some additional training in tunnel vision and awareness, so we're going to give him that extra training before he goes back on the road. Again, every situation that we're involved in, we analyze, not just Lorain Police Department, but a lot of procedures that we use today in our job was from issues that happened around the country from other departments. So, for instance, back in the 60s, I believe it was Highway 101 robbery, bank robbers, when there was 4 or 5 FBI agents, I think it was FBI agents, were killed in a shootout, and that created the felony stop for violent felons. So every time that we find ways that we can improve things, we analyze things and we assess it, and we make revisions and improve the way we do things. So I think the lesson learned here for Officer Palmer and for all the cops in the city of Lorain, and hopefully other departments see this, is, man, it's a good idea to have maybe bite-resistant gloves on hand for most of the guys that you can have it. Because I think if he had those gloves initially, which no one here thought about, no one thought about that kind of stuff, and you don't think about that stuff until something happens. So now we have 20 sets, and we're going to buy more next year that officers can have on hand in their cruiser, that when they have to deal with a dog like this, that those gloves, that Palmer had those gloves initially for the first dog, he may not have been injured so severely. So I hope it answers your question. I kind of went around a big circle to get there, but it's a complicated question with a complicated answer. So we've changed a lot of things to protect our officers from getting more injured from dogs or even cats. Because I've seen cats that do worse than the dogs do, and so it's not about dogs, it's about animals in general. We deal with raccoons too, so I hope other departments see what happened here and see that the changes we made, not because we were wrong, because we're trying to do a better job protecting our cops, So I hope our departments see what we did to protect our cops better, and I hope they adopt the same kind of processes that we adopted. So I hope I answered the question. I know it was long, and I apologize. I kind of sound like a lawyer right now.
Chief, I think we got a question.
First of all, thank you for your time this morning, Chief. I just have a question regarding the expert, Chief Hughes. You mentioned multiple times how police officers are not animal experts, and he is used for the expert report. Was there any animal experts that were reached out to consult this investigation?
He was consulted for the use of force. The use of force is different than an animal behavior expert. the police officers are not judged, police officers are judged by what the police officer would reasonably believe is going to occur. An animal expert has a different perspective than a cop has, because they're better. I mean, the animal experts can have degrees in, a bachelor's degree in animal behavior. We'll never get to that level. So it would be not prudent for us to have an animal expert like that, who knows way more than we know. It's not apples to apples, it's apples to pears. So it's way different. But we have consulted experts in animals to move forward. How can we better train our cops? What equipment can we get that's going to better enhance their safety? And what can we do in general? And the consensus is, hey, humane officer, animal control, safety equipment. Because we'll never be able to train our cops to be experts at animals. We can't be experts at animals and marriage counselors and child counselors, and we just can't do it all. We can't do it all. So we have to pick and choose. And what we can't be experts at, we got to find a way to better equip our officers to make up for it with safety measures.
And did you mention, I'm sorry, I might have the word correct, did you mention that Lorain Police Department has or used to have an animal counselor or mediator, like to help train police officers with animals, or?
So we had Officer Rick Rose, who was a retired Lorain police officer, and we brought back as the animal control officer, but he's retired again, so we've been without one for about 4 years now, 3 years now.
Sorry, what's the formal title for that?
He was the animal control officer.
Okay,
Animal control.
are you looking for another one then?
We are, well, we're in discussions with the mayor's office and city council soon to talk about it. But my goal is to make it animal control / humane.
What's the effectiveness of a tase on an animal? Does it work? Is it lethal? Do you know?
We can hit a animal standing still, a big animal, but it's hard enough to hit people with tasers or standing still. We miss people a lot, tasers. So to think that we can hit an animal running at us with a taser or even pepper spray, it's unreal. It's just impossible. It's impossible.
What's the response that you have to people in the public who already think that Officer Palmer is guilty and is in the wrong and should be responsible? Lots of people are calling for his job. What's the message to those folks?
This is the problem I have with social media. Social media, rumors fly. People make decisions based on partial data, based on one video. They don't allow the process to move forward for the investigation. Rumors are rampant. I mean, even last night, we were already accused of holding a secret meeting in a secret place with Fox 8 News. Well, it's not a secret because you're all here. There's more than Fox 8 News here. So it just shows you how the rumors are. I would say this. We can only control people who are reasonable, who are willing to look at the facts and make a conclusion based on the facts. People who are unreasonable, there's nothing you can do to force feed them facts. Their mind's already made up, and they will not change their mind at all. I believe that. Now, I hope that they prove me wrong. I hope that they dive into that report, and I hope they read every sentence of it. And I hope that they make their own conclusion based on the facts and based on the videos. And I hope they get there. But I don't think some will. I think some are just dug in, and they're in love with animals so much that I think they're blinded with emotion. And our investigations are emotionless because they have to be. I've had a dog my whole life, part of my family. But it's emotionless investigations. That's the way it has to be. I mean, can you imagine if police officers just worked on emotion day in and day out? They would be in psycho wards after 3 years. With cops investigating all the sex crimes and all the violence, they couldn't handle it. So cops have got to be emotionless when you're investigating crimes. It's just the way it's got to be. And it's the same with this investigation. You take the emotions out of it and the feelings all out of it, and you go down to the facts, and the facts lead us where we're at today.
And what's your final message to the Kerns family?
I'm not going to get into that. They need to read the report, and they have their own, they're going to do what they're going to do. I don't expect them to understand. They're emotionally involved, as they should be. It's their pet, their family member, as they consider it, as I consider my dog my family member. I don't expect them to get over it. I don't expect them to get to understand it. I'm not sure I would if I was in their shoes. I don't know. I don't know. So I really have nothing about that, except that.
Chief, sorry, just one more question. Just wondering, what was the number of bullets that was fired by Officer Palmer? And then what kind of discipline would an officer face for breaking the body-worn camera policy?
We believe it was 4 rounds fired total. 2 or 3 initially, and then 1 or 2 as the dog passed. So disciplinary action is carried out in a fashion to change behavior, and we have to be consistent with Officer Palmer as we are with everybody else. Officers like body-worn cameras. When we brought them in, they embraced them, and they were asking for them, because body-worn cameras, 99% of the time, clear officers of misconduct. They love them. So I have not done the research what our history is with disciplinary action on body-worn camera violations. It's on my desk. I was preparing for this the whole week, so I have not got to that yet.
Do you had many incidents with the public using deadly force on the dog?
As in the public themselves or us?
The public said.
Man, I don't know. I'd have to look at some stats. I know we've had a few in my career. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. I mean, we could figure it out, but our data from our new software only goes back, I think, 8 or 9 years now, because we went to a new system with the county, so we don't go back too far, but 8, 10 years, I'm not sure what it is, but we can definitely look. Anybody else?
What's the timeline on a female officer in the co-op?
I have no idea. We're working forward. That's the best I can tell you. When it's on the council agenda, you'll know when it happens.
So-
Additional funding for that?
Will we? We will.
So the normal course, if you had a humane officer, or a dog warden, or whatever you're going to call it, would have been to have them respond instead of an officer.
This probably would not have changed this incident here, because it may have changed it by prevention. So when we had Officer Bros here working as the animal control officer, some of the complaints that the mayor's office received on this address would have been addressed by him more aggressively, because the police investigations versus building investigations, building housing planning investigations are different. We can go out there and be more aggressive at complaint investigations and citations issued, where they have to follow different rules. Their rules are a little bit different than ours. So when I say it could be different, preventative, the complaints would have came down and we'd have sent the animal control officer out there to deal with the noxious odors, the feces everywhere, the garbage everywhere. We could have done that stuff ourselves instead of relying on the Lorain County Health District. So if I had to get my magic 8-ball out and say, could we have prevented this with a humane officer? I think we could have, but I don't know.
Sorry, did you say when the officer will be back on active duty?
He is on duty, but he's on modified duty.
Okay.
How long, timeline for disciplinary, when you make a decision? Is it a couple weeks, is it a month, or is it a week?
No, I'm going to try to get it done next week.
Sorry, what does modified duty mean exactly?
It means whatever I give him a job to do. It could be radio, it could be taking reports in the lobby, it could be helping Detective Bureau, it could be helping Internal Affairs, it could be doing all kinds of things. Whatever I give them the task to do that we're behind on, it could be helping in records, it could be answering public information requests, it could be printing documents out for the news media, it could be all kinds of things. Basically, whatever I think we need done that we're behind on, that's where I can throw. Anything else? One last call. Okay. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Have a great day.